That's an excellent question. I think the government numbers here say 900,000 COVID deaths. You had the CDC chief a few weeks ago saying, well, actually, a lot of those cases were people who died with COVID, but not from COVID. But this is typical of how the numbers in this pandemic are, often just totally bogus, because it's almost as if the government did not want accurate data, but maybe it's not intentional because the government doesn't get accurate data for a lot of things. So, but there are so many fundamental questions which we could have had better information on. As far as the health data, a number of foreign nations like Britain and Israel have much better health data as far as the exposure. And something which the media here doesn't report is that a number of states in the U.S., you've had more COVID fatalities among the fully vaxxed in the last month or 2-3 months than among the unvaxxed. But you've got Biden out there saying it's a pandemic of the unvaxxed. This is complete BS. What they have chosen to ignore is natural immunity. Again, we've had over 70 million people who got COVID, almost more than 69 million of those recovered. If you look at other CDC data, which said that there only about 1 out of 4 cases are reported or diagnosed, that would mean we've had over 150 million Americans who've had COVID, almost with over 149 million surviving. But the government has chosen to ignore natural immunity, the immunity that people have after they have the infection and recover. So what you have with this health, a lot of the trouble goes back to the Food and Drug Administration. The Food and Drug Administration's motto is, we have nothing to hide, for more than 75 years. The FDA rushed through Pfizer's vaccine application. There have been lawsuits trying to get access to what the data that Pfizer submitted to the FDA. And the FDA has said it's going to take them 75 years to fully release the information which they used to rush through the authorization for the Pfizer. It's amazing to see how the teacher unions have come out as basically enemies of parents, if not enemies of the kids, by insisting that the kids. My understanding is in California that the teacher unions were insisting that the kids get vaccinated, but the teachers didn't have to. And this is, I'd like to clarify, I'm not anti-vax. I am anti-mandate. But the gentleman makes a point about the danger of varies, but what we've had with the Pfizer and the other approved vaccines are what's called leaky vaccines. And a leaky vaccine is one that promises to prevent the virus, but it fails. And to see, it's a great example of how the bureaucratic cover-ups have proliferated throughout this epidemic, because the Biden administration, Biden bet his presidency on the efficacy of those vaccines. And in May of last year, the CDC decided to stop counting almost all the breakthrough infections. That is, infections that occurred after a person had both vaccine shots. And so there was, it was like the CDC intentionally blindfolded Americans to how these vaccines were performing far not nearly as effective as the CDC said. The fundamental question here is, if someone has had the virus and recovered, they have natural immunity, and it doesn't make sense to force them to get the same shot. I think there have been a number of studies that showed that people who had COVID and recovered had better protection than people that got vaccines. And yet you have the federal policymakers, including Biden, who simply have chosen to ignore natural immunity that the people who recovered have. And it's almost like, it was clear early on that Biden kept talking about the number of shots and the number of arms. He kept saying, we've had 100 million shots and 100 million arms. We've had this, we've had that. It sounded like the Soviet Union bragging about the increase in steel output. But it wasn't a good measure of public health. And there have been so many key issues that have been swept under the rug. And the FDA and CDC don't really seem to be that interested in any facts which would undercut the official narrative.